Hey guys, this is our last week of our series Pointing at God. Last week we talked about God and asked big questions about if He's real. And if He's real, why does He allow suffering in the world? This week we're going to wrap it up with Jesus and what He's calling us to do and be. Who was the historical Jesus and why did He come?
At the center of our faith is a person who lived in history 2,000 years ago. We call him Jesus, and that is kind of a translation of his name. In the Hebrew or Aramaic, it would be Yeshua, which is also how you would say what we call Joshua, an Old Testament figure that Jesus was named after. Joshua, or Yeshua, was a very common name, so there's nothing about his name that set him apart at the time. There's not a lot of Jesuses in our culture now. I think there is in Spanish culture, a lot of Jesuses out there, but Joshua, very common. So there was nothing that set him apart as a person till he grew up, and then he kind of came out of the closet. And ta-da! And gave them jazz hands and let them know that there's something special about his life. And so he lived a very human life. He knew what it was like to be a kid. He knew what it's like to be a teenager. He knew what it was like to go through very hard times and to just blend in and to be that guy and to not be noticed or to not have friends. He's gone through everything. In fact, as an adult, he had his friends either desert him or deny him or betray him. So God himself lived a life that really identified with our pain and our frustration. That's one of the good news messages about Jesus. So when we say Jesus, we are referring to a very specific Joshua, a very specific Yeshua, who is Jesus the rescuer, the one who shows us that God can rescue us. You're using in another session the word redeem, who can bring us out of our slavery, who can make us free. And he does that, first of all, by entering into it with us. He identifies with us as, I know how you hurt, I know what it's like to go what you're going through. And so God shows us how much he connects with us by being human. But that's what Jesus summarizes for us. And then he's Jesus Christ. When we say Christ, that's the title that means the rescuer, the redeemer, the Messiah, the one who can meet us where we're at and be Jesus. He can be a human being who just kind of blends in and hurts, but then he knows what it's like to be not just Jesus, but Jesus Christ, the rescuer who grabs us and puts his arms around us and shows us how to live a better life, who forgives us for all the times we've been messed up, who heals us from all of our hurts, and calls us into a community of people who together then are going to express our changedness together in our relationships. Jesus Christ can't top it. Amazing.
If Jesus makes these claims about himself that he is God, that he is the Son of Man, how can we view him in our culture? Like how can we view him? And C.S. Lewis talks about that either you have to believe his claims or disregard him as crazy. How can you approach him in that? Either you believe him all the way or you think he's nuts.
People have different ways of approaching Jesus, the topic of Jesus. I'll tell you my approach. There's no one, with a three-dimensional person, you can approach him from all different sides, right? So there's no one way. Jesus, I think, is the only one way to God, but there's no one way to Jesus. I think there's many ways to approach Jesus. And I approach him first as a teacher, and I invite other people to approach him first as a teacher and then move on from there, because I think when you approach him first as a teacher, you can see the nature of his teachings go way beyond what any human would produce. So I think his teachings then lead you to accept him as more than a teacher. And C.S. Lewis said that we shouldn't just accept him as a teacher. You can't just pat him on the back and say he's a good moral teacher, because some of the stuff he said leads to his divinity. And so if you accept his teachings, you're going to have to be challenged to accept more than that. So I like to just start, though, with the teaching element and see if people can accept that. So I encourage people just to look at his ethical teaching, at the Sermon on the Mount, at the Golden Rule, which is purely Jesus. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Love others the way you want to be loved. Do unto others as you would have them do unto. That's purely Jesus. I think it's a popular cultural myth that the Golden Rule is out there in every religion. The Silver Rule is out there in every religion. Don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. That is said in many different faiths. But the Golden Rule, that's pure Jesus. Do to others what you want them to do to you. And so we take the initiative, in other words, because the world will never be changed on the Silver Rule. You know, no one's going to change the world by saying, I just try not to hurt people. Well, but because people are hurting all the time, and you need to initiate helping them. It's not enough to say, I just don't hurt. You need to be willing to take the initiative to help, or you're becoming part of the problem just by being passive. So the golden rule is the only thing that's going to change the world. So I want to engage people by talking about the teaching of Jesus, and when they see that there is something powerful there that can change lives, then I can use that as the first step towards helping them consider that he's more than a teacher. That's a good, for me, I think it's a good starting point.
Do I have to believe in Jesus to have eternal life, to go to heaven?
The question, do I need to believe in God do I need to believe in Jesus to go to heaven? It's almost sounding a negative, like, do I really need to believe this? And it's important to understand, what does it mean when we say, do we need to believe in that? Because it goes back to the first session on truth. When we believe in Christ, it's not just a set of beliefs. We're looking at a person. I think the hard thing in our culture is that people are rejecting Christ for who he never claimed to be, and for the things he never claimed to do. Richard Dawkins, a well-known atheist, author of The God Deliverer, said, I don't want to believe in a God who is mean, nasty, vindictive, and brutish. If I were talking to him, I'd say, yeah, me too. Hey, we're on the same page. I don't want to believe in that God, nor is that the God who is shown in the scriptures. That's not who Jesus is. The God of scriptures is a God who is love. It's very important to distinguish between God who is love and just a God who actually bestows loving, things upon us or does good things. No, he is love. He is good. And I think the more we investigate that truth and understand who the person of Christ is, we'll see it as a really good thing. I think we might actually, that question of do we really need to believe in God to go to heaven, I think that might actually just sort of slowly peter out, because we'll see, man, this is much more than just a ticket to heaven. This is something that I want.
So when we raise this conversation about God's grace and his mercy and his kindness and his openness to inviting people in, it can raise the question for some people who want to take advantage of that is, how far can I get away with it? How selfish can I live? How much can I live for myself and ignore God in this life and then just hang out with him in the next life? And when it raises that issue inside us, if anyone has that question, so how far is too far? How much can I sin? How far away from God can I get? How selfishly can I live before he rejects me? I would say that if it's raising that question for you, you probably should stop and do a heart check and say that something may be wrong right now in my relationship with God. Because if you really, really love someone, you don't ask the question, how far away from you can I get and still have you as my friend? If you really love someone, you want to find ways of getting together with them, of doing life together, of enjoying each other's company. And if you know you might be doing something that hurts them or that lets them down, you want to correct that. You want to know how they're feeling and how they're doing. And we're often saying, God, don't you see me? Don't you care about me? But if this is a love relationship, we should be saying, God, I see you, I hear you, I at least care about you. And I want to know what's going on in your life and how is my action affecting you. If we were to all stop right now and listen, we wouldn't hear what is actually happening all around us. And that is, there's music playing, there's DJs talking, there's sportscasters giving reports, there's interviews, there's news. All of that is happening on radio frequencies all around us right now, where we're recording this and where people are watching this. In every room, there's radio waves, and we don't hear it. And it's not because the radio signal's not there. It's because we don't have the equipment to tune into it. And then some of us have the equipment. I think when we become a Christian, God gives us the equipment to hear him, but we're just not turning it to the right frequency. And sometimes that's because we don't want to, and we're like going, la, 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 la. I actually don't want to, because if God spoke very clearly to me and told me what I need to do, I would have to admit what's wrong in my life and what I need to change. And some of us know, we kind of know what's wrong, we just don't want to admit it. So we actually want to say, I don't hear God. You're hearing him now, even through this conversation. He is reminding you of how loved you are and how he wants you to live more like Jesus. Because he speaks through people as well as through his Spirit. So know that God is speaking and be ready to be tuned in wherever that may come from.